So may I just, Aaron was asking, so being affiliated to the government or not being affiliated to the government, does it really matter?
The president, whoever he is, he or she is.
Up till now, there is no female candidate as yet, but the days are early.
Has a distinct role as set out in the Constitution. I think we have to be quite clear about this. The president is not a separate power center in Singapore. That cannot be. There can only be one power center in Singapore, and that must be the government. The president also has very limited executive authority. He has custodial duties, as spelled out in the Constitution, to protect the reserves. And also, with regard to certain issues, like the appointment of senior people in the civil service and the armed forces. The president also has a role in representing Singapore overseas when he meets diplomats and when he travels overseas. I think this is very important because people judge a country by the caliber of the presidents. So all of this implies, in my view, that you need somebody in the presidency who is steady, who is experienced with a background, who knows the issues, who knows the limits of what the president can do, and most important, who is fair, who is neutral. The presidency has to be above politics. He has to work with the government of the day. He has to work with all political parties, including the opposition. He has to work with civic and social organizations, and he cannot take a partisan view. So, my view is, rather than talking about who is independent or who is not independent, what is most important is that in the execution of his duties, the president must act independently. He must consider the issues on their own merits, make up his own mind, and exercise his authority accordingly. While the president has no executive authority, the president does have a certain amount of influence by his personal example, by the causes which he championed. In a way, you might describe this, as in the terminology of defense as soft power, not hard power. I was struck. I found an article by Mr. Ho Kwon Pin, I think last Saturday, quite interesting on the influence of the president. So the president is not without the capability to make changes. How he makes changes, I think, depends on the president's personality and style of working. Obviously, if he wants to do anything effectively, he must have the respect of the government or ministers. He must be able to work with them. He must consult, in my view, very widely with all sections of society. He must identify areas of need. At my press conference, I was asked, is there any particular area which I would concentrate on, or if particular concentration, if I'm like the president? I said that as I said, we are coming into a period of unprecedented change, of upheavals, of great changes here. Businesses have to respond to that. Investment companies have to respond to that. Governments have to respond to that. And governments have a responsibility, a great responsibility, to ensure that their citizens are not adversely affected by all of these changes. Help them to prepare for the changes. And education, training, the economic policies, But even with the best preparation and the best schemes, the most vulnerable in our society, people who are handicapped, who are disadvantaged, may fall between the cracks. There's a saying that a rising tide lifts all boats. But I think it's the responsibility of government to make sure that the boats are seaworthy and not crushed by waves. And for people who are unable to keep up, I think it's a responsibility of a government to help them distribute life jackets to make sure that they stay afloat, that they are not overwhelmed by their problems. And I think even in our society, despite all the policies, the good policies which the government has, there are people who are in need, the disadvantaged, handicapped. And I think that if I were elected president, I would like to pay particular attention to these people, because I think that they do need help. And I think that that's an area where the president can mobilize society, as Mr. Nathan has done with his present challenge, to fill in the cracks and to help those who are most in need of assistance beyond what the government can presently give.